right. Mr. Hounsom, you will talk to us about the district annual performance report. Interesting information. Huh?
Very kind of you.
It always is.
To say that.
Your information interesting?
To find this
To
is.
say that it is.
It didn't print real good on my printer. I tried looking at it sideways, and I tried printing it.
This is a cheat sheet that
Synopsis.
should have helped.
Good, thank you.
I like cheat sheet. I know, I like it too.
It's new.
I don't know, it's like a little seal.
It's new.
This is the cheat sheet. I hate to see the test.
Okay. Pages 58 through 69 in your packet are the official DESE supporting data documents. I've tried to distill them down and make them a little more understandable here tonight. This is a very, I'll call it, dense document. So I'm hopeful also the things in your hands may help make some sense of what we're going to talk about. So, first of all, what is the annual performance report that we'll call by the acronym APR? It is the single point of accountability for school districts in Missouri. Both state level and federal level accountability is tied up in this report. It's designed to build on itself over 3 years of data to give you a longer range view of how a school district is doing, so not a single point in time. We receive both a district level report, and then each building in the district receives a building level report as well. We do use this information in our school improvement planning, and we would hope that this shows up in each building's school improvement plans that you see each fall. This year, we would do this presentation in August or September of the school year. Due to some new testing, the release was delayed, and so now we're getting to it in February, which I'm not sure how helpful that is in school improvement planning, but it's what we're dealing with for now. Now, this year's APR has some adjustments in it, some irregularities that I'll mention as we go throughout. First of all, 2017, we have our English 2 and Algebra 1 scores are missing due to errors from the testing company that has impacted our testing data. This year, you'll notice that all science scores are missing due to the fact that last year was a science field test year. So I'll show you how that's impacted the score, but taking the science scores out doesn't help us for sure. We're very, very strong in science. I mentioned district and building level reports. There are actually no building level reports this year, again, due to all of the changes in testing. So the district level report is all that we will receive. I'm going to talk to you about status scales, meaning how well we do on the test. We have all new status scales this year because the new test came out, written to be much more rigorous, written to reduce the number of students who are scoring proficient or advanced. The scores came back and they had to revise the status scales just to be fair, and I'll show you what that means. They've lowered the thresholds to hit certain points to be fair. I'm going to talk to you about a component called hold harmless. Hold harmless was a modification that was never intended to be a part of the APR. It was put in to balance things out. So it's a modification. Well, now the modification has been modified this year, and I'll explain that a little bit. So there's a lot there. And then we have a new attendance calculation. So those are all things that are new, and I'll hit all of those and kind of show you where those are. But there are some things impacting the APR. So the APR scoring guide is a point system based on 5 goals. The first 2 are centered around academic achievement. Typically, those account for 70 out of a total of 140 total points. So half of the total points are based on how our students do on state assessments. The parenthesis number are the numbers that are possible this year because that represents pulling out the science scores out of each of the first 2 standards. So this year, instead of 140 total points, it's 120 total points, and so it's a revised scale as compared to past years. But I'm going to go through each of these goals and how we earn those 40, 10, 30, 10, and 30 points in order to get to our final score. So 5 goals in the MSIP. First thing in your cheat sheet. We also typically do a second presentation. We usually do the state assessment scores and the APR a little bit separately, and so we can spend a little more time. This year they were both delayed, came out together, so we're going to try and combine it a little bit. The state assessment scores are what drives a large portion of the APR. What you're seeing here are last year's state scores. This was the first year of a new assessment, so we are considering these scores to be a baseline year. I have not done any comparison of these scores to past years, as these scores are not comparable. Not only are they new tests, they are new score levels, new scoring guides, new cutoff points, new everything. So this represents a baseline year. Now, the information that you have in front of you, let me help you with this. Each of those sections represents a different subject area. If we look at the top section, those are our English Language Arts score. You can see the building, the grade level, subject, which is all English, and then it lists the number of students who score at each of the 4 score levels, below basic, basic, proficient, or advanced. Okay? Coming on over, I simply add up the number that are proficient or advanced out of the total number of students and give you a percent of students who scored either proficient or advanced. That's under the percent column. Now, I provide that number for you because that's probably the easiest number to understand. The percent proficient or advanced is no longer a part of the APR calculation. The official number that's used is the next number called the MPI. The MPI stands for the MAP Performance Index. The MAP Performance Index gives a numerical value to your scores based on kids scoring at all levels throughout the 4 levels. So it's not just how many cross a line in the middle. We receive more points for kids who score advanced, a little less for proficient, a little less for basic, and 1 point only for kids who score below basic. And I'll give you some context to those MPI numbers here in just a moment. I don't want to, but higher the better. The scores range, the lowest possible score is 100, the highest possible score is 500. A very high score is the mid to high 300s. You get in the high 300s, that's a very high score.
100 was the lowest, 500?
100 is the lowest possible score. If every student scored below basic, we would receive 100. If every student was advanced, we would have a 500.
Okay, thank you.
So that's the range of possible scores. The 2 red columns, the percent and the MPI, would typically be used to compare our performance this year to our performance last year. As I said, we can't compare this to our performance last year, so it's blank for now. We'll fill that in next year when we have this year's scores. And then the blue columns is the comparison of our district, first of all, to the state in relation to the percent of students who score proficient or advanced at that grade level and on that test. A positive number means we're higher than the state. A negative number would indicate that we are lower than the state average. And the final column is really the one that I've looked at the most. It's a comparison of our MAP Performance Index compared to the state's MAP Performance Index at that particular grade level and in that subject area. And again, a positive number would represent the gap between us and the performance of the state, meaning we're higher. And we are higher across the board, so we won't worry about a negative circumstance. So we don't have to worry about that one. So again, these are our baseline scores. Now, all we have right now are just scores. Scores are fine. They tell you how you're doing, but we don't have the background information that we typically receive telling us why are our scores this way, in what areas did our students do very well, on what objectives did our students struggle. We're still waiting for that information, so while scores are informative, there's not a lot that we can do to change instruction until we get some of those other details. But these are our beginning scores. Teachers have them, and we will work with them the best that we can. But these are the backbone that go into building the first 2 goals of our APR. I don't want to jump over this too fast, or is there anything on that chart that you have questions about or would like me to address?
I'm just really glad you explained it.
Me too.
I wasn't getting it,
Yeah,
just looking at
and
it.
so you said that like the 300s indicate like really good, the good scores.
To be a very high-performing school district, if we're in the 370s to 380s, that is the
Excellent.
top level.
Okay,
So,
wonderful.
and I'll show you that here in just a
Okay,
moment as
thank
well.
you.
Okay? So we're going to jump into Standard 1, Academic Achievement. These are the points that we receive for these scores that I just showed you. Some vocabulary before we get into this. There are 3 ways that school districts can earn points on their academic achievement. First is status, which just means how high do we score? Okay, how do our kids do? The second is progress, meaning is the district improving over time? And I will tell you with the new test that we started with last year, no one's earning progress points. Those scores did not go up as compared to previous years. So progress points are going to be off the table for a while. Third is growth, and growth is a little more calculated or a little more complicated calculation. It is looking at each student, where they start after they test for the first time in 3rd grade, setting a growth goal for them, which is done mathematically, and then in 4th grade, did they grow that amount? Did they show the amount of growth that we would expect to see from 3rd to 4th grade, 4th to 5th, 5th to 6th, 6th to 7th, all the way up through. So it's a student-by-student calculation. Okay? So 3 ways we can earn points that I'm going to talk to you about. Status, how high? Progress, is the district getting better? Growth, kid by kid, are we seeing the growth that we would expect? The hold harmless provision that I told you about, because the APR changed so many times, we had new standards, we had new tests, they were being introduced. We still don't have 3 consecutive years worth of solid data to build on, and we haven't for a long time. Because of that, they put a hold harmless provision in, meaning if your previous scores, if all of these changes caused your scores to go down, they would award you hold harmless points where you could keep your performance at least level. They are trying to phase that out, understandably. So the new formula is, instead of just hold harmless, if our scores from 2018 are not as high as they were from 2017, our hold harmless calculation is 2/3 of the points from 2017 and 1/3 of the points from 2018. So it's mixing them together. When I say 2017, that actually, those hold harmless points actually go back to 2014 because that's when it all started to not be consistent. So the 2017 hold harmless points actually could go back to 2014. I'll show you that in a moment. It will make more sense in a moment, I promise. Okay, but these are the terms that we're going to be talking about. All right, the next page in your cheat sheet is the scoring guide for Standard 1, and these are our status targets. I told you Standard 1 at the beginning was worth a total of 40 points. We are trying to earn, in some combination of our status, our progress, or our growth, we are trying to earn 16 points in English, 16 points in math, and 8 points in social studies. That's where the 40 points come from. Now, if our performance is high enough, if you look here, there are four levels of performance. The bottom is the floor. Next level up is approaching. 3rd level up is on track. And the 4th level up is target. Target is the highest status level that you can reach as a school district. And Mrs. Haskell, if you look at those index scores, you can see there 375, 378, 382. Those are incredibly high scores. Those are the indexes you would need to score at the highest level and earn your full amount of points in each subject area just on your status alone. If you're scoring high enough in that target category, you receive all the points for that subject area without even looking at growth or progress. Okay? So you're going to keep that sheet open because I'm going to show you our scores, but I thought you might want to have the scale to kind of look and see where we are. So our supporting data, and this is from the sheets in your packet. First, at ELA, you can see our MAP performance index from 2016, 17, and 18. 17 is in italics, meaning that there are scores missing. The English 2 scores that got thrown out are not included there. Our 3 indexes, we receive a 3-year average in English Language Arts is 370.4. If you look on the score sheet that I gave you on page 2, you'll see that falls into the on-track category for our MAP Performance Index, meaning we earn 12 points out of our 16 for English Language Arts based on our status. The progress would indicate that we are getting better from 2016 through 2018. Again, no one's going to earn progress points because we have a new assessment that's designed to lower our scores. So progress points we did not earn. We also did not hit our growth points either. We have 0. And I would say that is our primary area of focus when you look at things we take away from this APR report are those growth numbers. And just a brief, a brief explanation of growth. Growth is judged on a scale from 0 to 100, with 50 representing the middle. 50 is the expected amount of growth that you would see in a child's academic scores. So above 50 means they grew more than expected. Below 50 would mean they grew less than expected. Our target is 50. For English Language Arts, our growth score was 49.2. And so we were right there, but we were not at the 50. We are just slightly below. If you look at math, you will see a similar report. You see our 3 index scores. Our average puts us in the on-track category from your score sheet, which is, again, gives us 12 of our 16 points for math. Progress, we did not receive. Growth, in math, we were at 49.4. We needed to be at 50. So as I look around at other districts, what you'll typically see is our status score, our index, is much higher than other districts. But other districts receive, not all districts, but you will find other districts who do not score as well, but they hit their growth points because they are at 50 where we are at 49.4. You hear the teachers and the counselors talk about NWEA testing. NWEA testing is an attempt on our part to measure growth throughout the school year and be able to focus and find those kids who are not showing growth so that we can hopefully step in and do something about it. That's the design of the NWEA. Hopefully it will be reflected in our APR. Science, we have no scores, so if we jump down to that line, you can disregard that. Social studies, you can see our 3 years, our index of 387.0. If you look on our score sheet, that puts us in the target category. So we receive all 8 possible points in social studies for being in the target category. So a summary of Goal 1, ELA, 16 points possible. I showed you on the other page we received 12 for our status. Now, that is lower than we received last year. So the hold harmless provision kicks in. Okay? This year's score was lower than last year's score. So hold harmless kicks in. So we received 2/3 of our points in ELA last year, plus 1/3 of our ELA points this year, which results in a final score of 14.7 points out of 16 for which we receive official credits. Okay? It's the same situation in math. We earned 12 for our status, none for progress or growth. That's lower than last year. Hold harmless kicks in. We received 2/3 of the number of points we received last year, plus 1/3 of what we received this year, for a total of 14.7 points in math. Science, no points. Social studies, we received all 8 based on our status. So for Goal 1, out of the 40 possible points, our official score is 37.4 out of 40. Before I move to Goal 2, any questions, comments on Goal 1? By the way, I'm going to repeat everything I just said because Goal 2 is exactly the same, only a different group of students. So I'll go much quicker.
Test on this?
Yeah, well, you got it. This is straightforward. Goal 2 is the exact same thing, only the population of students we are looking at are our subgroups within the district. And they are the 5 historically underperforming subgroups in the state of Missouri. ELL, IEP, which is special education, free and reduced lunch, black students, and Hispanic students. So these are their test scores of that specific subgroup. You see the scoring guide here. The number of points we're shooting for in English and math are 4 total points that we can earn through status, progress, or growth. In social studies, we can earn 2 total points through status, progress, or growth. So you've got your scoring guide for Standard 2 there. As we look at our scores, this is almost identical to Standard 1. The ELA 3-year average puts us in the on-track category, which gives us 3 out of our possible total of 4 points. Math, same thing. 312.1 puts us at a level of on-track, which is 3 points out of 4 total. And in social studies, our index of 349.3 also puts us in the on-track category for social studies, which is 1.5 out of 2 points. You'll notice there in English and math, same story as in Standard 1. Progress is simply not going to happen. And growth, instead of 50 at both ELA and math, we are at 49.2.
So, can I ask a question?
Yes, absolutely.
So if the tests aren't comparable, how did they calculate growth on an individual student basis?
So they changed everything to a, can I use your cheat sheet?
You can.
NCE, a normal curve equivalency.
Okay.
And so the NCEs were never supposed to be part of the APR because they were going to have 3 consistent years worth of data. When they couldn't do that, they used NCE scores. And so they've tried to take things from 2 different scales and make them somewhat comparable.
Gotcha.
Okay. A summary of our Standard 2 points then. ELA, we received 3 out of 4, but just like the other slide, hold harmless kicked in. So our official score is 3.7. Math, same exact score. And then social studies is 1 point. Now, there is no growth in social studies. To have growth, you have to have testing year after year. There's only 1 social studies test at government, so there is no growth possible. So our total in Standard 2 is 8.9 out of a 10, possible 10 points. That's Standards 1 and 2. All of those relate directly to state assessment. And I'd be happy to take any questions about those first 2 before we move into some other areas of the school district. Okay. Oh, I forgot this slide. Let me jump back. So Standard 2. We used to talk about the terms a lot, No Child Left Behind, as our federal legislation. The new federal legislation is called ESSA, E-S-S-A, the Every Student Succeeds Act. Missouri's ESSA plan includes the provision for targeted support and improvement schools. And I think we need to just discuss what that means here a little bit. A targeted school, what Missouri's going to do is they're going to identify the bottom performing 5% of school buildings in the state of Missouri. Those buildings will then go into targeted status, meaning doing some improvement planning. Obviously, that will be none of our buildings. However, once those schools are designated, the next thing they will do is they will go to every building in the state and they will look at the scores for every single identified subgroup in each building. And if there is a subgroup in a building that scores at the same level as the targeted school, then that school becomes targeted. So in other words, if our special ed population in a building, if their scores, or ELL, or IEP, or free and reduced lunch, not combined, but each one's separated out, if their scores are equal to the targeted whole school buildings, then that school will be considered a targeted school. Okay? Now, we suffer a little bit here because the N size has to be greater than 30, which eliminates most small school districts in the state won't have a subgroup greater than 30. We do. I prepared this slide, presented it to the administrators on Tuesday, and we said more information is coming. Well, some more information has come. We received a call from DESE yesterday. We believe that we will have some buildings that are impacted by this in individual subgroups. I don't have enough details yet to talk about it. I don't know what it means. We've not talked with teachers or principals yet, so I'd like to be able to come back to you when I can speak about this a little more intelligently and kind of lay out what that means. But I believe this is going to impact an individual subgroup and building within our district. I think what it means is we'll have to have a plan. I think is basically what it means. And we'll have to work on improving, which we do anyway. But I'll come back to you with that. But this could be something that we need to visit more about here in the future.
Subgroups again are?
So free and reduced lunch, special education, ELL, black students, Hispanic students are the 5 identified subgroups that we are held accountable for. Okay.
And the criteria, again, is that if their performance is less than the performance of what?
The bottom performing 5% of full buildings in the state. So the 5%, the bottom 5% of whole buildings, the entire population, that will set a benchmark for performance below which, if you have a MAP index, you will enter into targeted status. So if we have a subgroup that is scoring at that level, that building will also enter into targeted status then. Okay? All right, standard 3. You've got a cheat sheet there in front of you again. This is 30 total points. We can receive 10 points on each of those goals, 3-1 through 3-3, 3-4, 3-5 through 3-6. Let me tell you what those mean, though. First one, 3-1 through 3-3, is our students' performance on the ACT test, SAT, ASVAB, academic testing in general, but those are the big ones. You can see we earn points based on how well our students do on any of those, so they can receive points on any of those. You see our 3-year average, basically the percent of points possible that we could have earned is 82.3. If you look at your score sheet for Standard 3, that puts us in the target category with the cutoff being 71.5, so we are well above. So we receive all 10 of our points on our status alone in that area. Okay? Second one down, goal 3.4, are our students' performance in AP classes, AP testing, the technical skills attainment tests, which are given over at RTI, dual credit and project lead the way classes. You'll see we have seen a slight decline over the last 3 years. Our 3-year average ended up being at 70.8. The cutoff for reaching the top level of the target is 47.8, so we are well above, or we are well into the top category. So we receive all 10 of our status points. You can see we don't get to use them, but we receive 2 extra credit points in the right-hand side. RTI can receive 2 extra credit points for program expansion, meaning they're growing their program. And all 10 sending schools in the consortium have access to those extra points. So while we did not use them, I'm certain there are school districts in our consortium that did and are extremely grateful for the 2 points. So Mr. Duncan and all the folks over at RTI do a great job. This is just another area that their progressiveness helps out.
What's TSA stand for again?
Technical skill attainment. So those are tests given after a career and technical class. Finally, 3.5.3.6 is our college and career placement, and this is we are evaluated on where our kids go after they leave us. We receive credit for going into the workforce for skills in which they were trained, going to post-secondary education, going to military. We receive positive points for all of that. We receive negative points if they don't do any of those, or we're not able to find them to ask, and we turn them in as unknown. Our 3-year average is 87.1. To score at the top level, we needed an average of 90, so this puts us in the on-track category, which means we earned 7.5 out of the 10 points for our status. However, if you look from 2016 to 2018, we are improving, so we earned 2 progress points. So we have a total of 9.5 out of 10. So our little summary here, 30 possible, 10 for the first set of goals. We only get credit for 10 for the second set of goals, and then 9.5 for the third set of goals, so 29.5 out of 30 for goal 3. Okay? All right, the next 2 are a little easier to understand. Oh, first of all, ACT summary. Since ACT was a part of this goal, I thought I'd give you information. 2016, 17, and 18 were the 3 years that the state provided ACT tests for all juniors in the state. So you'll see that those numbers grew both locally and at the state level. As a result, the composite scores dropped when all students were taking the ACT versus just those ones who were wanting to and were heading to college. You can see our indexes, what has happened over the last 3 years, very similar to the state trend. We did drop from 18 to 17, not as much as the state did, so the gap widened a little bit. What you'll start seeing next year are numbers probably returning back to the 2014-15 levels for those students who are interested in taking it. We have been asked, we've talked a little bit as a district whether we want to go ahead and offer that to all students. I think that's something we should still visit about, not tonight, but coming up with something to keep in mind for future thoughts. Okay, standard 4 is just attendance. The threshold is the percent of students who are here 90% of the time or more. That's been pretty standard for the last few years. They've now dropped it down to, at 90% of the time or more, used to be full credit. Anything below that was 0 credit. So it's either all or nothing. Now they've given partial credit. They've added in for students who are here at least 85% of the time or more, we receive partial points. So that is reflected in this new calculation. The threshold to meet this goal is that 3-year average has to be at least 90.0. So we're at 93.4 and in solid shape across the board with our 3 years of scores. So we do receive 10 points out of 10 on the attendance. Finally, our last goal is graduation rate. We calculate 4 different graduation rates: 4-year, 5-year, 6-year, and 7-year. And really the only difference between those two is working backwards to which starting 9th grade cohort you are tracking. Okay, and then adding in people that transfer in, people that transfer out. So those different populations just go back different years. You'll see 3 years of graduation rates for each. You'll see the 3-year average for each. The standard for getting full points on any of those graduation years is to be at 92.0. So you can see that we met that on the dot with our 5-year graduation rate. You will see we only earn progress points in the 7-year graduation rate. If you look across the trend there, I really think we should have progress points on the 5-year, but since we're in the top level, I'm assuming we didn't get them. But we do receive all 30 of our points based on our 5-year graduation rate. Okay? So, summing all this up, you see our scores from 2016 and 17 working down through there. That was when everything was worth 140. That includes all the biology points. In standards 1 and 2, you see the changed number of points possible for this year. So 2018 reflects standard 1 and 2 changing with all of the science scores removed. So if you get down to the bottom for this year, our total is 115.8 points out of a possible 120. If you compare that on a percentage basis to the past 2 years, we were at 97.5, 97.1, and 96.5. So the difference between this year and last year is 1 point out of 120 possible with science removed. So I would say very consistent scores. We're very proud of those scores. And I guess I would tell you, a lot of people ask me about the APR. I will tell you the APR measures exactly what it's intended to measure. And we went through in pretty good detail exactly what goes into measuring this. And I will tell you, we value everything that's measured in here. We value. I say this many ways, but I will also tell you, not everything we value is measured in here. And you'll see. You think about the programs and you think about that video that we saw at the beginning of this meeting. Mm-hmm. I say every year, we're about much more than our APR, and I would never want us to define ourselves by our APR. This is important. It's obviously the single point of accountability that the state uses, so we're not naive to its importance. But we also don't wish, we don't wish to neglect all the things that really make this a great school district and a great place to have your kids and to raise your family. There's a lot more that goes into it. So this is important, but being labeled the data guy, I never want to say that this is all important. There's a lot more. Okay? Finally, summary points here. Where we are, state assessments. We're getting ready to take year 2 of math and ELA. Last year was year 1. They are very rigorous. They are pushing our kids and teachers. We wish we had the item analysis that I list down there with a question mark to tell us where are we doing well and where do we really need to focus. They say it's coming. So it's going to be too late to do anything this year, but the more information we can get about what our kids are, where they're performing, it should help us do well in the future. This is year 1 of the new science assessments. Biology, I listed biology, but all science assessments. This is year 1, so it'll be a baseline year for biology. This is the final year of giving our current government assessment. It's actually a field test year. So when I said 3 years of consistent data, we won't have new science scores till next year, new history scores till the year after that. So it's going to be 5 to 6 years further until we have 3 years of consistent data. By then, I think we'll have a new APR system, a new accountability system. So who knows? We'll go year to year. We'll do our best to explain what's happening at the state level. We'll do our best to represent our district well on this. But there's a lot of fluidity to all of this. So that's a lot. Any questions on our annual performance report? Any comments, thoughts?
Well, I really appreciate your explanation. I mean, really, you did break it down very well, and I do appreciate that. Thank you.
I dug into this.
I'm not sure it's a compliment to know this much about the APR or not.
When I first looked at this, I was like, oh, boy.
The supporting data documents that you have in your packet are the direct from DESE, and they are not the easiest to read at all. But as you go through, you can start to see patterns in there and yearly trends and how they translate into points. On here is all explained in the Understanding Your APR document, which is on the DESE website, which is the scoring guide that takes those numbers and assigns points to them, as I've shown you here tonight.
All right. Thank you very
I
much.
think math man is a better word. Math man.
So Craig,
I kind of took offense at the comment they had that math triggers people at the high school. I don't understand that. I don't understand that at all.
So Craig, the percentages on our cheat sheet, the first page of our
Yes.
cheat sheet, where our percentages are higher than the state on most everything.
Yes.
That's a good measure there, right? That helps us kind of compare where we are to other.
Yes, that's a good measure, and I would tell you, it's interesting that there are a couple spots where we have negative numbers down in the math area, but our index is nicely higher than the state. So what that's saying is we do have some kids down in the bottom level. The easiest way to change your index is to get kids out of the below basic, that very bottom level. At least get them up to the basic level, and your points triple. It's the below basic that really drag it down. So while we have a negative number below that bar of proficient or advanced, our overall index is higher, meaning we have a lot more kids also at this other end, at the high level, that we're getting points and credit for, that's pushing our MAP index higher. So that's an interesting little phenomenon there that is kind of telling. We've got to move some kids, but we've got a lot of kids up at the higher end driving our scores up as well.
Which one of those would be considered, they've mastered that grade level's expectations?
Proficient.
Proficient, okay.
I would say kind of the way the state almost defines proficient now is proficient is almost well above expectations.
So somewhere between the.
I would say somewhere between the basic and proficient means they are a standard level student who has mastered that grade level and is in no danger of moving on with difficulty. I'd say proficient means you're a B plus, A minus student toward the top is what I would say.
And then not too long ago, maybe a year, maybe it's longer, you spoke briefly about a consortium of schools who were thinking about developing their own
Yes.
method of testing. Is that still in progress, or did they give up?
Yeah, and Dr. Zalis may have to help me somewhat. Yes, it's still there. They are looking for a financial commitment from districts, and what they're wanting to do is basically not take the MAP test. They want to give, like our NWEA is one of the tests that is on their list for possibilities, that basically we would give the NWEA test locally. We would measure how our students are doing. We would take that data, we would do something with it as far as school improvement, and we would understand where our kids are. And we could give the state access to our scores that we create. Their idea is that should be good enough. We shouldn't, that you get a lot more value out of that testing system by measuring growth over time and seeing how kids are doing over the school year rather than a single testing event in the spring. However, in our discussions, we find it highly unlikely that the state is going to say, yes, give that test, just send us your scores, and we'll enter them. We also don't know that that's completely legal for the federal accountability in the ESSA, that the state is responsible for assessing its students. So while we like the idea on merit, I wish that they would say yes, because I think it would be better for us, and I think it would be better for our students. We find the probability of that ever being allowed to happen, to me, is almost zero. And so committing financial support at this point to hop in when we're already doing this. We're already participating basically by giving the NWEA. We have not made a decision to make the financial commitment to join.
It's still out there.
It's a pretty significant
That was a long answer to
investment,
say
and
yes. It's
so
still there.
when that was part of the accreditation task force. If you remember, we had the accreditation and assessment task force. We participated, and I was on the accreditation side. Craig had attended some of the assessment side, and that group came with recommendations and presented them to DESE, and it wasn't approved that we could use that. So the thought was then, while we're in this mode, that we would show that we can measure those things that the APR can measure locally and in our way. But I asked at the time, there was some discussion about doing an affiliate membership where you could have access to the information, participate with less of a financial commitment, because it's really larger districts that are going to be able to afford to do this, and we just didn't feel that there was enough for us there to significantly contribute to that. So I asked that question at our last MASA meeting to the person who's on, one of the people that are on the committee, and they couldn't really answer whether the affiliate is still there. So we would be interested in that part. But you can see DESE will measure what, as Craig said, this is really all they know right now. And MSIP 6 is still out there. So there'll be changes, as you mentioned, to our accreditation process from that perspective. So there's a whole lot of moving parts. But it's disappointing that while he said the APR is important, it'd be nice to be able to measure other things that make a good school district. But I'm not sure we're going to get there anytime soon.
Well, I mean, I felt a significant level of frustration with the state and their methods, and some of it's, I know, has been political over the last several years, but to not have a consistent measure is problematic.
Well, when you misuse the data to compare last year to this year, that's a danger. Some people like to do that, and when you load up so much of your accreditation on assessment, you have a tendency to lean that way. School districts do. There's danger there, and then with the what's hurting us with the science test, for example, that hurts us.
Yeah.
It's not anything we did. It's just what happened. So we all feel that. And interestingly enough, we were told that everything was going to be okay, and we were told 2 weeks ago by our area supervisor. I was sharing this with Jim before we came down, that, so you guys shouldn't have got so uptight. Your APRs are all good. I said, well, we got this data in February, and we're trying to talk with our teachers, celebrate what we did well in August, like we typically do the back-to-school presentation. We can't do that. And now we have some unknowns, and it's hard to do anything with it the middle of February when we're nearing the end of the third quarter. So all along, we've just said, teachers, just keep doing your thing. We'll keep being a good school. We'll keep working hard, and things will work out the way they're supposed to. Because I think our community understands that, and by and large, and our district does. You do, mainly because of the way Mr. Hounsom explains it. And we do have good kids and good teachers, and things do work the way they're supposed to. But yeah, I share your frustration, have shared your frustration, but we'll just keep working. I don't know what else to say to that.
Yeah.
No, but I read somewhere where they said, somebody in DESI said they were done changing the test.
No,
That's the oversimplification.
I think that's probably true, because what we went through, going from the GLEs to the Missouri Core, what was it, the Missouri, what did we call it at the time? Anyway, Missouri Core Academic Standards.
Yeah.
Now, to switch to the Missouri Learning Standards, every time we did that, they had to come up with a new assessment written to the new standards. I do believe, and with the work that was done on the new Missouri Learning Standards at the legislative level, I don't think anyone wants to touch those ever again. And now that they have an assessment written to those, I don't think they ever want to touch that again. So I do believe, barring something completely unforeseen, we are settled in now,
Well, that's
finally.
relative term, because it's going to be 6 years until it's all settled in.
That's correct. Yeah. Yeah, that's true. By the time we catch up, yes.
But to be clear, even though we have our scores from the exams last year, we don't know where we did well.
We don't know why our scores
So
are
we
what
can't-
they are.
We can't adjust our methods for this next.
Right now, we have no information that allows us to adjust instruction in the classroom to address maybe low areas on the test, because we don't know what the low areas on the test are.
Which is what we would be working on all year.
Right.
Right.
Exactly.
Right.
And, yeah, how do you do
Right.
that now?
Can't.
So
There's
we'll
still a
see.
level of frustration.
Yes.
Right.
Well, we're smiling. We're still a good school, and we'll continue to be one. And
Have they said anything
That's
about this upcoming test, whether or not the portions, English and math portions of that scoring will be available sooner next year?
What they told me when I called up was the item analysis will be available for these scores that I've just shown you. They were going to get those ready after they finished the APRs. So the APRs came out. The APRs became final just last Friday. So my assumption would be they're working on that now, and we'll be here,
Soon.
I wouldn't say soon, sometime this spring. Our hope would be that they get to the point where they can produce those in August or September, to where we can get a chance to look at them and perhaps do something about it. Would be our goal.
The subgroup achievement he's talking about has been on our improvement plans already. So what we'd be asked to do to remedy that is never done anyway, because it shows up all the time at the building level. And so that won't be a surprise, because it'll just affirm some of the school improvement planning that you've already heard. But I was telling Craig yesterday that we're never done with that. It's never, all right, you have arrived and it's over. It's just something that goes on in perpetuity, but it'll be one more thing. And the fact that we have 30 people in those subgroups, versus some small schools who will never be measured on that because they have less than 30.
Right.
That's
It's a fact of life we live with.
yeah.
All right, thank you.
Mhm.
You did an excellent job.
Yeah, thanks,
We
Greg.
Thank you,
appreciate
Craig.
it, yes.